Hello everybody, my name is Christian Quick and welcome back to another video. This is the part 2 coming in from last time, and it took me a little bit while because my phone is absolutely suffering. I'm getting a new phone, and huge gracias to the Brazilian artist who made me this picture. So without further ado, let's get started. Communication is a language that happens in 4 parts. We have the reading, the writing, the listening, and the speaking. And in a previous video called A Writing System That Everyone Can Understand, I went into full detail of how it's possible to make both writing and reading universally understandable, but that's only half of the scope of language. So it's time to ask ourselves a bigger question. Is it possible to have a new way of speaking that doesn't change the rules of that language, but also allows anyone of any other language to be able to listen and understand you no matter what language you know? I think I found a solution so we can break it down. But if we can agree that communication is about listening and understanding, then you being able to respond and be understood, the answer is more clear than you think. For example, let's say that we both speak fluent English and Spanish. Would you believe me if I said that we can already communicate in 4 different ways? They can be split into 2 groups, being closed and open communication. Closed communication would be if the 2 of us are speaking English or if the 2 of us are speaking Spanish, while open communication is if I, for example, am speaking English and you're speaking Spanish, or you're speaking English and I'm speaking Spanish. So it's 2 different languages that are simultaneously kind of being spoken. The back and forth just kind of changes. But the main point is that if we can both speak fluently, then it shouldn't matter because, well, with enough patience and practice, you can truly brute force anything. Like if you tried counting from 1 to 10, but between all the evens and all the odds, switch the language, it's difficult because the muscle memory isn't set up or is ready to do that, but it's one of those things that's possible. But out of these 4 ways of communication, can we push it even further? I asked about the 4 ways of communication being open and closed, but is it possible to speak in a way that's both open and closed at the same time? The superposition of language. We're going to discuss this next part for the matter of proof of possibility over the reality that someone would take this example literally. But superposition is not one state, all states at once. It's possible that I can speak English, except all the nouns and verbs specifically are Spanish. Or maybe you speak Spanish with perfect English grammar. For these 2 examples, we can see that for the 2 examples, we can see there. So we have all these the nouns, the English, the verbs, and then we have the English with the Spanish grammar. Or maybe you can speak with 2 examples to start a language. I lost my part of the script. It's okay. To start English grammar from these 2 examples, we can start to see the language is about knowing and agreeing what word is meant for, and then for you to understand it. When you can fluently speak 2 languages, you have the brain power to braid the dictionaries however you want with endless possibilities. And it's this braiding that makes even a universal language to be spoken. And the example that I said about the numbers being able to drop back and forth, but technically you could do this with anything, whether you're switching nouns, switching verbs. Typically we do this actually in language, not that we target a part of speech, but when we are forgetting a word, we say, what's that word? What's that word? And you might say it in your native language and someone might understand and be like, you mean so-and-so. So we generally do this kind of shorthand braiding a little bit, but the braiding is only used for word recognition and definition. But technically, if you wanted to do it on purpose, that is very possible, and that is what this is sort of trying to do, is doing it on purpose, that interbraiding. In case you didn't see my video about a universal writing system, I would highly recommend the watch, as this next part is the key that you understand the writing in order to get to speaking. When I theorized the possibility of a universal writing system, it's actually more than that. Remember that my theory uses updated kanmojis and eventually an IPA accurate writing system to go along with it. So if you use the writing, it's helpful only for a person who already speaks a language and can tell a foreigner how to read it, but they will depend on the kanmojis to understand. But that's just it. You need kanmojis to understand. But if a language only uses kanmojis, they're essentially just emojis. And if I see a heart emoji and I speak English, I'll be tempted to call it a heart emoji, while the Japanese may call it a kokoro emoji. We're just assigning the word in our language to what we think the meaning of the emoji is, but if we instead give each emoji its own official way to be pronounced, doing this will change the game of universal communication as we know it. So we have they're divided, but instead of giving each language their own heart, you give it its official name, and then the official name goes to every language. Simple. In the universal writing system video, I said that the goal of words were supposed to have strict meanings. Then would when wait, what? That would eventually have its official stamp. Then the collection of symbols will be the same in all languages. Next, if we can attach a unique symbol to all kanmojis, then I should be able to spell out stamped words verbally. And since the sounds will be able to be the same for all languages, then that's the key to making a universal language that's possible at being read, written, heard, and spoken, and it won't matter what language you speak from the beginning. Actually, I thought about this a while ago, but my biggest hurdle was always Japanese having such a small vocal toolbox that it's impossible to give all the sounds a unique sound while making sure that all the sounds are one syllable to be the most efficient. On top of this, further research needs to be done as there are more, or as there are even more languages that have even less sounds than Japanese. So, solution, I will be making two versions for each kanmoji: a short form that is intended for efficiency, and a long form to ensure that all languages should be able to pronounce it in a set of syllables. All features beyond this point are subject to change. With that in mind, this is my theory of how the short and long form will work. So, when it comes down to the Rhoticus, they only have these syllables. And one of the things, we'll see it in the short form later, but there's like the T and the I, which would be like T, because it's like tit. But although Rhoticus has the sound, the ability to do T, things like Japanese, even though they have, instead of saying T, they would say chi, but Rhoticus doesn't have chi, there's that um, disagreement, that they both are unable to, despite having very small vocal boxes, agree on what they can universally speak. So this is why further research needs to be done, especially for the long form. But each kanji will have the short and the short form will have a single syllable and will be selectively pronounceable, meaning not everyone will probably be able to pronounce it, or if they try, it'll probably be very difficult for them. And the long form, its purpose or goal is to be dual syllable. This way you do not mix it up with a single syllable, and it will be globally pronounceable. Moving forward, we can get into the charts because it's about to get crazy. So we have the short forms. So the short form is the more efficient one, and I actually have to take out my app, in which I don't know if my app is even on. Yes, I do actually have it. How cool is that? Awesome. We're going to move this to the side in the half screen, and we're going to move this over here so that we can totally understand. This is going to come over here. We're going to need to crush this down. We're going to move this across. Can this be crushed any further? No. Can this be crushed any further? Okay, that's as good as that's gonna get. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so these consonants in the beginning are going to be called our initials, and the ones in the back here are going to be called our finals. And the final is getting to the middle of the syllable does not mean that that is the actual end of the syllable, because we are not only going to be just making them single syllable, but we're going to be able to combine two different syllables into one and then matching that, because I think that they are perfect. But anyways, you'll notice that there is a Q in here and the TS, and in the previous writing video I did not include those. Q is something that I have, so if you have the think where you put your tongue basically behind your tooth, the way you're blowing is the same, but to do the Q, you need to have your tongue on the roof of your mouth where that like hill is, where that space is. So you make the shh, and this is that flat, and then you just want to vibrate. So how you do think and how you vibrate it. So you have sh and z. So those are those two sounds. And you may be, if you're an English speaker, you are used to this TS. Well, you only use it sometimes when there's a T, S, and then kind of, well, not a T and S. Usually it's an S with a U. So you could say, like, Sue. When you say Sue, you always put in the s, and that's what we're looking for. But you never really say snake. You say snake. You open the mouth and it's snake and tsunami. They're definitely different. And if you're used to Japanese, you'll definitely be hearing this this difference all the time. It should be more ingrained in your head, the difference between s and s. But technically, you could do sa, si, se, so, and sa, si, se, so. So they are technically different. Try and not get them confused. But those are the two. And then if there's su, there's also zu, where there's the vibrant form. We'll get more into the vibrant forms in a moment, but those are the most important. But another thing is, if we remember, I love the fact that consonants are able to be the palindromes. So, the beginning of this is color, and we're going to, color is a Mouseca tool that we're going to save for later. But to understand, so I have this in key mode. So normally you'll be in manual, and manual may be, you have your 12 symbols, the 12 symbols per category. So this is shape, and out of all the shapes, you have container, whole, surface. Here you have the state of an object, so then you have hard, sweet, soft, hot. So these are your 12, and all categories have 12 in them. So the life category, plant, place, reptile, micro. So those are all there. But one of the things that I did to prevent all this huge scrolling is we have the key mode. If you're not familiar with key mode, simply you will be defaulted with color, but then you will have these major categories. Oh, I actually clicked on the shape. So if the state here, so I kind of wrote it above here. It's going to be in tiny font. It's kind of more so that I make sure that I explain this correctly. But the state, so all the stuff in the state category is going to have that final of li. So the li, le, la, ri. So this is as we keep going through. So state is going to be all the ones with li. So we click on li. So the one that would be li. Now this app currently doesn't have these in here because this is, like I said, from this moment, we're talking only theoretical, but that's okay. So the category itself is an official symbol, so it counts as the first of the 12. And I do have them set up like this. So we have S, T, SH, P, H, K, whatever it is. So this S, T, and SH would be these first three right here, state, hard, and sweet. And this PHK would be like the second row, because this is the second row, so it'd be like PHK. But since they're all states, so we would do li for all of them. So it'd be sli, tli, shli, pli, kli, and kli. So those were all the things. And actually, we will see hle and kli later, because if you remember our previous examples, we do use stripes and cold. But in order to move these around, so if I wanted to do like change, right? Change is this last category here. It's the 12th one, so it's ya. So if I have movement or make here, make is the fourth one in the second row. So we go to the fourth one in the second row. This is an N. So then it'd be nya is to make. Nya. And then if I wanted to do another one, we can do like movement and like to slip. So move is la, and then second row, third one would be, so this would be cla. So that's really how it works. I think the idea is pretty simple. You just kind of go into the category that you need. You have your initial and your end, and you want to attach them together. Where it gets a little bit more complex is when you start mixing them together. So if I have um strong uh strong. What is two? Oh, we could probably do shirt, right? What would shirt be? Because shirt would have to be cloth. So cloth comes from the autonomy category. So we have wi, and cloth is the second. So we have s uh h w i, right? So we have shui, right? And then we need to flip. So cloth, and we need chest, which would be body. And I believe it's front. We'll talk about the second. What do we call it? Should be this one. Yes, chest. So we'll talk about the other meanings for a moment. But this one is the fourth in human. So we go to human, which is RI. But since it's on the back, right? So we would do fourth front. So this would be CHRI. So then we would have shui and tri. But since this is in the back, we're going to flip this from CHRI to CHIR. So we would have Schwirch, like that. Swirch. Now this one was pretty easy because this one had an I sound, and this one also conveniently had an I sound. But this would be like shirt, which Schwirch isn't too far off. But let's say it had a different one, which we'll see these. So if one of them ended in an I, the first one ends in an I, and the second one ends in an E, it would make the and bot. If the first one starts with an I and the second one ends in an A, so an I and an A makes owl, like about. If it's an E and another E, it makes the E and bet. If it's an E and an A, it makes the like the O, like saw or bought. It's accented, but it kind of fits because I want to put them all as a BT if I could. We have, if you have the first as an A, the second's an E, it's going to make an oo sound. So I just have 9 core vowels that allow you to put all this together. When an E is put with an I said put because I want to do all the B's and T's, but we don't have, put is not a word. There is no put, but there's a put, and they're close. So close enough. But this is how the combinations are going to work. That way you can still put them on. So it's going to be a completely different letter when they disagree. But if they're the same, like the II, the EE, or the AA, then they will keep their A, E, and I. So that's for simplicity's sake. Hopefully you understood what I was doing here in the app and uh that kind of part, because we're gonna have to do it again when we get into the short form. So let's go back into full screen here. And we can go back later. But as we've already discussed, we had ple and kle. We're gonna move this on to the other side now. You'll just have to believe me, so I don't have to keep pulling up the app and back and forth. But we had stripe as hle and cold as kle, and then we have that and for animals, so we have and re, so tsra. So an animal and a stripe, so we have the tsre and the il. So here we have the e, and if we look at our combination chart, the e and I makes the in put. So it would just be srolf. Srolf. And then for animal and cold, the only difference between hlit and klit is literally the H and the K. So if this is thrul, then this is srulk. And then well, that's how they get combined. So the long form does the same thing. So there is an initial, which is those first 12, and then there is the final. The final is your category base. So there's all these, and then you would just do the same thing. Combine this, combine that. However, the long form cannot have a reverse because Japanese specifically only can have an N at the end. And I don't know if there's a language that can't do that, but it just makes it really annoying. So I really have to make them sound like Buddha Buddha Buddha. Well, so here stripe becomes Piba, cold becomes Tiba, animal becomes Pode, so animal stripes become Pode Piba, while animal cold becomes Pode Tiba. And so automatically you sound like one of those tiki toki toki people. The Hawaiian stay fish, humu humu nuku nuku poa, things like that. It just sounds kind of funny. So now that we've went over those long and short forms, we can now talk about color. Because the problem with color is, remember, well, I don't know if you remember, but I said a category can only hold 12 things, unfortunately. And if it can only hold 12, that causes a big problem because there is definitely more than 12 colors that can be expressed, especially including that the color word itself is a word, then it technically I have 11 colors. And the core ones I chose was green, white, yellow, brown, gray, cyan, blue, magenta, purple, black. And what about poor little orange? Because in our previous examples, we've been using tiger, we've been saying orange, but there isn't an orange. But actually, there is an orange, but how can we phonetically put this out? And there's actually two solutions, and some of them have sub solutions. But when it comes to solution A, so what I did in the short form is instead of using a SOWL, if you're not too sure what a SOWL is, it is LRWY that can fit in between a consonant and vowel without breaking the syllable. So how we had cli and hli, that L is just in there, so we're just going to take all the cells away, and then we just have the I. So if I had the first one was I said the first one was green, I think I said. So the first one was green. So actually, technically, color is the first one because it's the category. So it'd be sit would be the way for color. There's no sowl. And then the next one would be, I forgot what's next, but we'll say no reddish shit. But the solution is all of them use I. And when I say all of them, I mean the 11 colors that I have here can only use the I. So we would have the si, chi, ji, bi, hi, whatever it is. So one solution that I could do to make orange is to just add more lines. So if I had the and the and I added them as their own things because I could do this, then if this is the solution we're doing by adding more lines, to add more symbols and stuff like that, then yeah. So then I'll put red under orange. So then we would have shi and sha. And then if we had one that was also closely in between the two, we could also have sha. So we have shi, sha, sha. But currently we just have I and eh. In the long form, I actually saved the u because I didn't actually really talk about it that much, but we're only allowed from the Rhoticus, we only have KPT, BDG, and the A, I, U, E, O. And it's just like the Japanese. However, like I said before, the T, Japanese doesn't have T, so technically I would have to remove this, somehow replace it with something else and be annoying about it. And that's part of the research that's still being done. But I did save the oo because in our core categories here for the form, we have the ka, ke, ki, ko, but I never used ku. So what we can do with all those oos is we can save those and do the same exact solution. We can add the boo, which is what we currently have for the 12 colors that exist, but we could also do goo, coo, to, poo, and then we can have 5 new layers. That's a ton of colors. That's a ton of colors, because each one would be 12. So it's 12, 24, 36, 48, and then 60. So that's, it's not that we need 60 colors, but red in the long form is tabu, tabu, it's tabu, and orange would be kadu in this solution. But what if we had a different solution? So in all of these, you'll notice that these are initials for the short form is all the flats. We have sa, ta, sh, ch, sh, and fa, but all of these have vibrant forms, the z, da, zh, j, zh, and va. Those are all their flats, or not flats. Those are all the vibrants, and we're not using them. So either we can choose to do solution A and give each and every single one of them their own unique symbol, which would grandly increase. It would double the amount of symbols that I'm allowed to have. So that would be huge. Or instead of doubling the amount of symbols, what I can do is take the symbols I have and further specify their meaning. So how I have X and Y, that is to represent that X and Y are two totally different things, but if I have X and then X the second, this would be like if I have head, and in another category I could have brain. They're both the same category thing that we're talking about. That's both head related. So if I wanted to use the same kanmoji for both of them, but I just changed the vocal ability, then we would be using the solution B here, where we can then have that simplified version. So what we would have is red would be like shi, and then the orange would be or technically this wouldn't be shi, this would be shi, and then this would be ji. Ah, Japanese got to me. So it would be shi, and this would be ji. And since a long form, there is no vibrance because I can't add sounds. Instead, for the long form in this B solution, we would just flip the initial and the final over. So for red, it would be tabu. It would be tabu, but orange would be buta. Tabu buta. So we've just switched or arranged the other two. And that would be the B solution of this. So if we put all the stuff together that we've learned, we can start to put the colors together. So as discussed, all the current colors have the I. So we would have thi and chi for white and black. And then we would just kind of put them together. So we have thich. And so then we have the penguin and zebra with white and black. But as we remember, the zebra comes from the il or hle, while penguin is cold, so it gets the kli, so stripe and whatnot. So zebra, 2 syllables, awesome. And even in this one, we would have 4 symbols, but since each of them can combine per 2, it's pretty cool. So we have this would be srul thich. Yeah, that's close enough. All right, so then Srolk, Thich as well for penguin, and then we would have Throl Ilf for tiger. And tiger, I decided not to add orange because I'll show you the two. If we added orange, we have the A and B solution where we have the Srol and then the Shulf. Yeah, and then for B, it would be Srolk, and then Zilf. Zilf. That would be Zilf. Oh, my bad. And the short forms are much easier to pronounce, but they're just much longer. So I have zebra, just a nice 2 syllables. The Srolk tich is technically also 2 syllables. But this Hode Piba Tobu Kebu, that's 8. So we have dramatically increased. However, the difference between efficiency and accessibility is you can't generally have the two. So that's why I have the short form and long form, because it's craziness. But it has its own little ring to it, I guess. So penguin becomes po de tiba tobu kebu, and tiger becomes po de piba toba without orange whatsoever, because toba is, I believe in this example, sharp. But I think I used big in the previous example, but that's a different problem. But then we have in the solution A, we would have Kadatoba, but in the solution B for orange, we would have Butatoba. So they definitely sound different. Like the orange in solution A is Tadu versus Buta. Like that's completely different. And in the short form, the short forms, we have she versus je. So very different sounds completely. But here we're starting to put some stuff together. Well, then we get to push it a little bit further. If it is too difficult, there's no shame in using the long form. That's okay. I'm looking for my stuff. I did have a second slide, and we have a little notice because there were some people that were like, I want to push this to the next level, but I need to mention something that I think has been confusing some people, and I want to clarify that my system has many inputs and many outputs. The goal is to have locked words with various grammar. This means that if I'm writing in English, the Spanish translation is not English or Spanish. Look at this, look at this. Boom. It's not English or Spanish. It's Spanish words with English grammar, or it's English words with English words with Spanish grammar, grammar words with English grammar. I think I said that correct. Anyways, and this is why I mentioned the superposition of communication, because in my app there are 7 languages. Um 7 languages, but each sentence does not have 7 translation. Each sentence has 42 translations because we have the X for words and Y for grammar. So we have X words, Y grammar. And then here is the 42 because in my 7 languages that I have in here are English, Chinese, Spanish, French, German, Russian, Japanese. And so when we talk about an example, right? And we have a nice sentence. We have English to Chinese. So this, if we have X on the left and then grammar on the right, technically when I type in the inputs, I'm typing English words, and it's not actually the words because the words are getting translated. So realistically, what I'm typing is in the order of English grammar. So I think this should be switched. Lol, but that's okay. So we would we type and we put in English, and then we would have the grammar output. But I think actually both ways, if you flip it, I mean I could say it a different way, but whatever. But if you have English words, Chinese grammar, you can also have Chinese words, English grammar, and that's how this would end up. Because you would have the English input. Yeah, so I'm talking about this one, where you would input the English, but realistically, because it's the input, you're only keeping the grammar, but it's getting translated into Chinese. And so you have Chinese words, English grammar, and you can do that with all of them. That's why there ends up so many, when realistically in normal dictionaries or whatnot, when you have phrases, right? So if we go to 4 languages, there are 6 translations where everything just points at each other once. But what I'm doing is English gets into its superpositional kanjis, and they can then just be touched into any language. So English automatically touches 3. This one touches 3. This one touches 3. This one touches 3 because everyone's touching something that's not themselves. Sounds weird, but then there's 12 translations, even though there's 4 languages. While that's now double than what the 6 was. So when we have the 42 translations, and here's all their things. So if I'm typing in English, you will only ever see in my examples, if I'm typing in English in my little app thing, because I do want to do some work where I do some English translations, but you're only seeing a small portion because you're only looking at the English that I'm doing. So although English is involved also in these other categories, you won't see the other categories unless somebody from the other language is putting it into English from their thing. So if someone was Chinese, they were typing Chinese and it was getting put into English, well, now we have the Chinese grammar, but it gets converted into English words, and then I have to try and cipher that out. But and that's the only part that you should have to work on, because vocabulary with the stamps you can just learn pretty easily. There's still other problems. We'll talk about this in another video, but I just really wanted to clarify that difference there, because I can assume that all languages have the word car, but it's more difficult in the languages that don't agree, like prepositions, right? When I say something is on something, something is above something, like if there is a table, because there is a sentence I'm going to get to with a table, and I say above the table, if there is a cup on or above, or not on or over the table, both of them are above because they're both subsets of above. It's like above is the area and then everything to the sky. So technically, if it's hovering, it's over, and if it's touching, it's just above it. But some people in other languages might say that above is also hovering if it's just really close. There's these weird nuances, and this is one of the things. This is another thing that I'm going to get to in another video as well, because I had something from Tom Ska, and I want to go over one of his videos and the points that he made. It's really good stuff. But let's get into the examples. So I took table above cup is basically from Japanese, because it would be tsukue no ue, wa, or ga. I don't remember which one, but then you would have cup desu. So tables above, cup is. And generally, I think that you would normally be able to understand table above cup is, because it's a simple sentence. It's not the most complex, but in English we say the cup is on the table. And these sentences are very different, considering we use a completely different preposition, and the focus is like the first subject that gets mentioned. We're talking about the table and the fact that we're looking above the table. We're mentioning that table first, and then we're directing you from the table to the cup, while in this I'm talking about the cup. And then I'm saying the cup is, I'm giving you more information. So the cup is all in your mind, right? And then here the table is all in your mind. It's the first subject. And then I say simply that the cup is, and then here I ended the table. So we're on the table. So I think these cultural differences, and sometimes this distinction can be different words or different tenses based on the language based. But anyways, what we're going to be doing is translating both these sentences to just show you the reading, the writing, the listening, the speaking, sort of, because I'm the only one who's going to be speaking, and I already did the writing and reading. So it's up to you to try and do the listening. But I wouldn't focus too much, because this is literally just an example. So the first thing I did is I took all of the symbols, or not symbols, all the words that are in both sentences. And then I put in these example 2 pattern, well, except for on, about on gets 3. Because I wanted to say what happens when 3 gets put in. So, and then I put their symbols. And then here we have the cure, I guess I can call it, and then the finalize, the combine, because here we have the IE, and the IE becomes the in box or bot. And when you have 3 symbols, remember that, so in here we have the IA becomes the O, but because we have a syllable, it gets finished with the first 2. And as it gets finished with these first 2 here, what happens to this third one? Oop, that's way too high. So what happens to this third one, and how can we tell the difference between the start and the end of a word? Simply, this is a start, or I guess we'd call this like the initial. You can call it a start, I guess, but this is the initial, and then this is the final. And if it's a new word, you would then do an initial. Because it's not the end of the word, we're going to put in another final, and then we put an apostrophe, because it is also another visual way to say this is not the end of the syllable, and that these are in fact attached. And then when I'm ready for the new word, I go back to the initial, and then I can do, if it's just this one, like tla is just an initial, and there is no final that comes after it. And you wouldn't just start something, because if it's by itself, you would only use an initial. So this is how you can make sure that you don't mix, or how you can start and stop is basically being able to identify the uh, the consonants. So like this T here is what's really giving away that it's the final, because we have a Sowell and then we have the T. If there wasn't a Sowell, then it would be the fact that it's a vowel T, and then this would automatically be a color. But the fact that the T is there, and in a long string, it might be hard to tell where it is unless I add a space. But if I didn't add a space, then we would just depend on this apostrophe, because that's what that's there for. So we have all of the simple. So we have the Fiels, Klitsch, but I'll just use the combined ones. I also put in the writing. Now, technically, the writing system would only be used for like if you have the English, the French, the German, right? So if you want to put in the system, currently it's not set up for that because I haven't gone through the entire IPA and I haven't made symbols for all of those. But just for fun and to show that this does still exist, I attached it to these, even though that's not what's intended. I just needed to use it for something to show that that's what it was for. And I didn't feel like going through the IPAs with actual English because I had already attached them onto here and realized that's not how that's supposed to work, but that's okay. But we have here, we have the f, the y, the a, u, and this, so we have fjaus, we have klelch, we have tla, clark, vier, oh, that's vier. That would be fjoltersch. So then we have the long forms. Tebo kadi, peda keda, paga, pada tige, tebo pibo, tebo paga tade. Wow. So they get crazy, crazy extreme. And then I decided, let's put them in those sentences. So you saw the sentences a minute ago. Well, I don't know how I ran out of room there. So we have the table. The table above cup is. So then we would still see the symbols. There it is. The writing, which should go with the English, but I made it for the symbols. So blah, 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 whatever. And then if we have table above cup is, but let's say that, like if I was Japanese and I needed to translate the sentence into English, but I just didn't know how to say it, I would use the symbol things. So you could use the this is the name of these. So I guess technically you could use the symbols for this if you wanted to. So I guess it's not totally wrong, but this would be Klelch, Pla, Tlerk, Fier. And then we have Peda, Keda, Paga, Pada, Tige, Tebo, Pebo. And then that's the table above cup is, and then here we have the cup is on the table. So here we have all the symbols that I have for them, and then we have the Fjols, Clark, Fier, Fjoltersch, Fjols, Klelch, Schelch. It's Schelch. Sometimes I say Kje, but it's because of the English. But it's Schelch. That's okay. Then we have Tebo kadi pada tige tebo pibo pebo paga tade tebo kadi peda keda. Crazy, but here we can see the difference and we can start to get a feel of what the look of the well, how the writing system looks. We can take a look at how the short form looks and feels, and we can also take a look at how the long form looks and feels. So, that's practically all it is. I wouldn't personally use it. Like I said, the most common that someone would probably use it is someone say like, "What's that thing called?" Someone could describe it, and then here they have the red fruit, small, sweet, many, and then someone would be like, "Probably cherries." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the thing." Unless they'd be like, "Nah, not that one." That well, like if they said red fruit and they'd be like apple, and they'd be like, "Nah, it's like smaller, it's sweet." And then maybe they'd say like strawberry, and then they're like, no, the other one, there's like many of them. Or maybe they could say like dark, you know. Then probably cherry, you know, like yeah, that's the one, that's the one. But you could use the symbol names for being able to do that. Oh boy, my phone. Okay. But I think, anyways, that is the wrap up. The end. The end. All right, but I think that wraps up all that I have to say about pushing the concept of a universal writing system into speaking. as well, then conceptually it appears that universal communication is possible in its entirety. Write, read, speak, and listen. I think my next video will be a collection of all the comments in the writing video. And I'll give this video a week. My phone, like I said, is broken. It's been turning on and off. It got wet, so I have to get another phone because it keeps turning on and off. And it was off yesterday, like all day. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not good, because I had the arts finished, the scripts finished, I had all the, like, the boards finished, and then I was stressing out. And then even in this video, I kind of stumbled between reading the script and the thing. I've just been like, I just gotta work it out, just gotta work it out. But anyways, I would like I said, I'll give the video a week, and I'll try and collect all the comments and respond to all the good points and responses. When I make this project, it's not just me, it's everyone working together and listening to making those adjustments that get us closer to the new era of something greater. So thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado, thank you everyone. Smiley face.